I'll call this public hearing to order. Tuesday, February the 4th. And as for reporting for roll call, I would like to announce that every member of County Council is here in attendance. I would mention that council members, if they were not in attendance at a public hearing, would be ineligible to vote on an issue when it comes before council at the upcoming council meeting. In a public hearing, the council's role is to hear presentations as well as comments from the public on the file and information presented. There will be no debate. However, any member of council may ask questions of clarification of either the staff or the public. There are 3 items of business this evening that we will be covering. The first is an application to enter into a development agreement on Old Dyke Road in New Minas. Laura Mosier, our manager of planning, will be presenting, and I want to congratulate Laura because Laura's been off and she has taken the time to come in this evening special to do this, and that shows a fair amount of dedication, so appreciate that. So just once again, council sets as a quasi-judicial capacity for the public hearing, and so doesn't engage in debate and doesn't argue with the presenter. It is necessary, however, that everyone has a good sense of what's being presented. So we will go to questions of clarification if there's any misunderstandings of any part from any council member. So, Laura, we'll give you the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Always happy to come speak about planning to council. So we are here tonight at a public hearing to discuss an application to enter into a development agreement to permit 2 multi-unit dwellings on Old Dyke Road in New Minas. Just by way of reminder, what is a development agreement? So a development agreement is a legal contract between yourselves as council and a property owner. It restricts the developer to the use or types of uses outlined in the development agreement. It's typically used when enabled through policy to enable something that isn't otherwise permitted under the land use bylaw for any number of reasons. The development agreement allows council to exercise more specific control over not only the type of use or uses, but over the character, form, and maintenance of the development. So in short, we can establish through the agreement different setbacks, building heights, different lot requirements in a development agreement than we would normally be able to do under just an as-of-right development under the land use bylaw. The agreement runs with the land and not the individual owner, so that owner can't sell that land and establish that use on a different piece of land, but any new owner has all of the rights and privileges and the restrictions outlined in that development agreement on that piece of land. This is our development agreement process. We received a complete application back in 2020. This application is quite an old one for various reasons. It did go through a number of changes, but it has been moving along steadily in recent months as plans have solidified for the owner. We did hold a public information meeting. As a result of the significant length of the application and the changes to the proposal, we did hold a second public information meeting. We didn't hold a meeting, actually, rather, I'm sorry, I misspoke. We recorded another presentation, posted it on our website, and notified property owners within 500 feet back in January of 2024. Following that, we conducted our staff review in consultation with other internal and external departments and agencies and prepared a staff report along with a draft development agreement that was presented to Planning Advisory Committee in December of 2024. Following a positive recommendation out of Planning Advisory Committee, Council gave this application initial consideration on January 7th, and we are here today at our public hearing and final consideration. Following the decision this evening, should it be decided, staff will post a notice on the municipal website advising of a 14-day appeal period beginning when that ad goes up, which is likely to occur tomorrow. So our proposal is to permit by a development agreement 2 residential dwellings containing a total of 50 residential units located on Old Dyke Road, having a PID of 55209-530 in New Minas. Proposals for high-density multi-unit development within the residential designation can only be considered by development agreement, and we'll talk about what makes this proposal high-density in the upcoming slides. This is the architect's rendering of the 2 buildings to be proposed. The building on your left is a 4-story building, and the building on your right is a 3-story building, and I do have a site plan coming up in the following slides, but the building on your left is at the south end of the site, and the building on your right is at the north. Our subject property is on the eastern end of New Minas. And this is an aerial photograph of the subject property. This is a former mini home or mobile home park that has seen declining population over the years as minis and mobiles have been moved out. There's still a handful of mobile homes there that are under rental. The owner owns them, but otherwise the site does have significantly fewer residents now than it did in previous years. We can see from this aerial photograph that Commercial Street in New Minas runs straight through the middle from west to east. And there is commercial development along Commercial Street, both on the north and south side. There are residential dwellings to the west, and to the north of the subject property, there's quite a significant ravine here, and so this area is zoned environmental constraints, which has very, very limited practically no development options. There's a total of 315 feet of road frontage on Old Dyke Road. However, not all of it is public road frontage, only the first 45 feet. So this sort of flat edge of the property is in public ownership. Beyond that, the road is in private ownership. So 270 feet is in private ownership, but the property is proposed to be accessed from the public frontage, and there is adequate public frontage for the zone. The subject property is also subject to several easements, some in favor of the village of New Minas in the northern end of the property, where there is pipe infrastructure that runs underground. The applicant is aware of that and is in discussions with the village in that regard. However, no construction is proposed on top of those easements, as that's not permitted. There are also easements in favor of Nova Scotia Power for overhead, wire infrastructure. This is a snip of the zoning for the area. As we can see, the areas to the south are in the general commercial zone, with the exception of the southeast quadrant of the intersection of the Granite Drive Connector and Commercial Street, which is in our comprehensive business development zone. So that was developed under development agreement as well. And then to the north and the west is the residential mixed density zone, just by way of what these zones permit, generally speaking. So the general commercial zone permits a broad range of commercial uses, including retail stores, restaurants, offices, and the like, up to a height of 6 stories along Commercial Street, and that includes residential development above, behind, or below those commercial units. The R3 zone permits a broad range of residential uses up to multi-unit dwellings containing 12 units at a height of 3 stories or 35 feet. And again, the O1 zone doesn't permit much development at all. No residential, no commercial. Really more just accessory to existing development for the most part. This is our future land use map. So this is what we look to when someone is looking to do something that isn't permitted as of right under the land use bylaw. We, as planners, check this map to understand what the future land use designation, so this is our forward-looking intent for the land, and it was council's intention that this land be residential in nature, as is consistent with the proposal. But importantly, this is where we look to policies in order to enable these types of developments within our municipal planning strategy. This again is an aerial photo, so we can see, and this again is quite dated. There's a handful of mini and mobile homes on the site, along with one unit dwelling. This one unit dwelling is intended to remain until the building in the southern end of the site is constructed. Again, this was the rendering, and then this is the site plan. So we see here building in the south end of the site. This would be the 4-story building we saw. So this interfaces with the commercial zone, which again permits 6 stories. And then this is the 3-story building that is proposed in the northern end of the site, again interfacing with the R3, which also permits 3 stories. Oh, I should point out, the building design, you can sort of see it on this site plan. See, there's little blue boxes here. These are balconies. So the building has been designed such that balconies are not on the rear walls of these buildings. So there wouldn't be balconies overlooking into the rear yards of the houses within the R3 zone. So development agreements can only be entered into with an enabling policy within the municipal planning strategy. The use, the location, and the criteria council is intended to use to assess the development agreement and its appropriateness must be contained in the municipal planning strategy in order for council to enter into a development agreement. So our enabling policy within the municipal planning strategy is that council shall consider only by development agreement proposals for high density residential development in the residential designation. So what does that mean? What is a high-density development? There is a bit of a misconception out there that apartment buildings are always high-density, and that is not the case. Density is a relationship. It's about the number of units on a given piece of land, dependent on the size. And so what is classified as high-density is, within our land use bylaw, we require a certain amount of lot area for each residential unit within zones that permit multi-unit dwellings. Within the R3 zone, it's 2,000 square feet of lot area. So simply put, if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you can have 5 units. You can't have 6. 6 would be high density. Or rather, 6 would be higher density than the R3 permits. The R4 zone requires 1,800 square feet of lot area per unit. This property is 1.2 acres in size, and at 50 units on the property, it exceeds the permitted density within the R4 zone. So staff did look at a rezoning to enable this development. However, within the R4 zone, 50 units would not have been permitted. And so this enabling policy exists for proposals like this that exceed the permitted density within the R4 zone. It has less to do with the fact that they are multi-unit dwellings and more to do with the total number of units. So the criteria that are available for you to use to assess this application is that the proposal for high density development has frontage on a collector road. And while this development does not have frontage on a collector road, it is directly behind properties on the collector road. Moreover, there is no other development on the public portion of this road, and there will not be any further development to the north of this development. And so this property operates sort of as an extension of those that are on the collector road. So staff are comfortable with the idea that this multi-unit dwelling, while it may not meet the policy, the letter of the policy, it does meet the intent. Access to the proposed high-density development is not intended to go through any low-density neighborhoods, and as we saw from our aerial photo, this does not. C, the design, scale, and location of buildings is sensitive to the character of and provides an appropriate transition to the surrounding areas. So when we looked at our mapping, we saw that 6 stories is permitted on commercial, whereas this first building is 4 and goes down to 3, which is consistent to the R3, and so staff are satisfied that there is an appropriate transition in this regard. And that the proposal meets the general development agreement criteria set out in section 5.3, and we'll go over that in the following slides. By way of supporting policies, so what policies are in our municipal planning strategy that are we looking to achieve through these types of applications? So one, within our growth centers, we're meant to provide vibrant, complete communities with municipal servicing, economic development, and a high quality of life and distinct character. So a complete community is defined as one where you can meet most of your daily needs within a reasonable distance. And I think we can all agree that Commercial Street in New Minas would meet most of your daily needs in terms of the things you need to buy, the things you need to do, the places you want to go. It does have municipal servicing. There is significant economic development and recreational opportunities to provide a high quality of life. Growth centers are meant to be the primary growth areas within the municipality, of which New Minas is one, and we're meant to minimize inefficient development patterns and residential developments into rural and agricultural areas, and by providing 50 new homes for people within New Minas, we will, in hope, significantly reduce demand for additional urban style development within our rural areas. When we look to our residential policies, we're meant to accommodate a wide range of housing options, including opportunities for mixed uses and increased densities in areas where urban services are efficient to deliver, which this area would definitely meet that definition. And for transportation and infrastructure, we're meant to promote compact, complete communities with accessible and active transportation options, and to make effective use of existing infrastructure located within growth centers, which this proposal most certainly does meet both of those objectives as well. We do have a brand new New Minas secondary plan. This may be the first application that we've had since we've adopted that. And that plan prompts us to enable diverse housing options that cater to a variety of household sizes and compositions, life stages, physical needs, and economic needs, and requires that council shall require developments enabled by development agreement to provide active transportation infrastructure and establish minimum requirements in the land use bylaw for bicycle parking for commercial and multi-unit residential uses. And the development agreement does require that 12 bicycle parking spaces be provided. When we look to our general criteria in section 5.3, we're looking that it be consistent with the intent of the municipal planning strategy, which we've just reviewed. We are not aware of any conflict with municipal or provincial programs, bylaws, or regulations. This will not have any negative impact on the municipality. We've gone over the land use compatibility considerations. There are schools and recreation opportunities nearby for the new residents of this proposal. We did consult with the Department of Public Works, and they were satisfied that there would not be any traffic hazards or congestion caused by this application. We consulted with the New Minas Fire Chief, who confirmed that services could be provided for this proposal, and he did also review the site plan for access and circulation with the ability to fight a fire should the unthinkable occur. We don't believe there's any potential for flooding or serious drainage problems. The applicant did submit a drainage plan that was reviewed by our Engineering and Public Works Department as well as the Provincial Department of Public Works, and neither department had concerns with regard to negative drainage impact. The site has already been developed, so we are confident that it is suitable for redevelopment, and with that, we believe that the general criteria have also been met. The draft development agreement was provided in your council package last month and is linked, I believe, again this month, and it enables the development of 50 residential units within 2 buildings. The location of the buildings is to be regulated through the site plan as we reviewed. The buildings must meet the setback requirements of the zone, and heights are limited to 3 and 4 stories. The 4-story building being in the south end of the site and the 3-story in the north end of the site. We've also required the construction of a fence or a vegetative buffer along the rear lot line to provide an effective visual barrier for residents that interface on that side. So again, this is our process. We are here at the public hearing. Our next step is for you to give it final consideration as council, and following that, there would be a 14-day appeal period after this public hearing. And I'll pass it back to the mayor for comments from the public.
Thank you, Ms. Mosier. And at this time, I would ask if there's any questions of clarification from any member of council. Councillor Lutz.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Through you, a question for Ms. Mosier. Happy birthday, by the way. Laura, it's her birthday today. A little bird told me. My question is just the design of the buildings with the balconies not on the back. Was that in response to public feedback, or was that something that the developer had taken into consideration initially when proposing this development?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Lutz. That's a good question. It wasn't something that staff directed. It was something that the architect took upon themselves, likely in response to public comment. But we didn't have significant negative comments from the public at the PIM or following. There were a couple of calls that had questions and some concerns. I mean, it's change, but nothing, not a huge volume.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Gates.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Laura. I believe I understood there's an easement on the property for the village's water or sewer at the top of the property. I guess my concern or comments would be what protects anything from being planted, like trees or cement pads for storage sheds being put on top of that? You know, it's. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gates. The area where the easement is intended to be parking, and it is proposed to be paved. However, that is permitted under an easement. If the village needed to access, they would just rip up the pavement. But yes, that has been considered, and the village again has been in contact with the applicant, mainly because they have some maintenance and repair to do on the infrastructure. So this is actually perfect timing, because the applicant can work with the village to ensure that a nicely paved brand new parking lot doesn't get ripped up.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Mosier. A couple of questions, Ms. Mosier, of clarification, please. One of the benefits of a development agreement is it allows you to put more controls in around the work or the type of structure that developers allowed to do. I'm just wondering about clarification on who monitors those permissions or controls to ensure that the developer is following them?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor McPherson, that would be our development officers. So when the applicant or the owner comes in for permits, they review the proposal against the development agreement as well as the land use bylaw where applicable. So the development agreement sometimes will say, for this thing you need to meet the requirements of the land use bylaw, and for other matters it might say, just generally speaking about development agreements, it'll say you can have this. So in this case, the R3 zone doesn't permit 4-story buildings, but this one says that southerly building is permitted to have a height of 4 stories.
So I'm glad to hear that we are responsible, or staff are responsible to monitor the controls that are set in place within the development agreement. Thank you for that. And Mr. Mayor, my second question of clarification is around the public engagement process, and just looking maybe for a little more clarity about how that happened and what type of replies you would have received or concerns you would have received for the public on this proposal.
Sure. So I want to get my dates right, so let me double check my staff report here. So when the application initially came in, it was 2020, so it was during COVID lockdown. So we did hold a virtual public information meeting that was recorded and posted to the website. That occurred in March of 2021. And then again in January of 2024, we re-recorded another presentation with the proposal as it stands today, and posted that to our website, as is our current practice, and notified area residents again that a new video was posted. So there were initially some concerns around privacy, so we have heard that, and the architect on the one hand has redesigned the building, and on the other hand we've also required that buffer. I did have one call following the second PIM, mostly with questions and concerns around whether or not the units would be affordable, which we have no ability to control at this time. And then the owner of the private road popped in one day to say that he had not been notified, but when we went back to check our records, we had sent him several letters. So that was the nature of the responses. Again, not a huge volume of public input on this one.
Mayor, thank you, Ms. Moser.
You. So I see no other lights on, so at this time I'll go to any member of the public that would like to address council on this matter. I would ask that you come forward to this mic here and state your name and address. And for the record, as a reminder, we've got a full agenda this evening, plus a council meeting after the public hearing, so the maximum allowable time for each speaker is 5 minutes. So please don't make me be the bad guy, but if you decide to come to the mic, and you're welcome to do that, you will have 5 minutes. So is there any member of the public that would like to address council on any questions of clarification or anything on this matter? No? Okay. We'll then move forward. Thank you, Ms. Moser, for your presentation. Our second item of business this evening is a rezoning application in North Kentville. This application will be presented by Alice Jacob, planner. Ms. Jacob, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an application for a land use bylaw map amendment to rezone 3 properties located on Brooklyn Street, North Kentville. And this is the process for a rezoning application similar to a DA application. The first step is to receive a complete application, and the second step is usually to organize a public information meeting. So this meeting is to gather the comments and feedback from the public regarding the application. And the third step of the process is a staff review, where we review the application and we reach out to both internal and external departments for their input on the application, and then we prepare a staff report. And the staff report is then presented to the Planning Advisory Committee. If the Planning Advisory Committee recommends a positive recommendation, Council gives the application a first reading, and Council will forward it to a public hearing. So public hearing is open to the members of the public, and soon after the public hearing, there will be a second reading, at which time council will make a decision on the application, and this decision will be published on our website. And at that time, a 14-day appeal period will begin for the application. So this is a County of Kings map, and the red circle on the map is the approximate location of the subject properties within the growth center of North Kentville. So these are the subject properties. We are considering 3 properties here. The total combined area of the properties is approximately 3 acres. There are no existing buildings on the property. There was a dwelling before 2023, before the purchase of the property. So that dwelling was demolished soon after the purchase by the new property owners. The access to the property is currently from Kerry Road. With regards to neighboring uses, the neighboring uses to the north and the west are residential dwellings, and to the east we have the Valley Regional Hospital, and to the south we have the town of Kentville, so there are a few commercial uses to the south. So as I mentioned earlier, the property was acquired by the applicant in 2023. The intention here is to build 2 multi-unit dwellings. The total number of units proposed is 60 units. The reason for the rezoning is because the property is located within a zone called the residential 1 and 2 unit zone, the R2 zone, and multi-unit dwellings are not a permitted building type within the R2 zone. So the proposal is to rezone the subject properties to the residential multi-unit R4 zone in order to enable the proposed development. For rezoning applications, we usually do not require a site plan. A site plan and the detailed plans are usually required at the permitting stage. So this was just a preliminary site plan submitted along with the application. And the red dashed line on the plan is the boundary of the subject properties, and the yellow ones are the proposed buildings. So the proposal is for 30 unit buildings, 230 unit buildings totaling 60 units. As I mentioned, the current access to the property is from Kerry Road. However, the applicant is proposing a new access from Brooklyn Street, and they have confirmed this access with the Department of Public Works. And as mentioned, the property is within the zone called the R2, or the residential 1 and 2 unit zone. So the neighboring uses to the neighboring properties to the north and the west are within the same zone as well. And this hatched portion of the property is something called the environmentally sensitive area overlay. So this overlay is usually applied to portions that are prone to flooding or that have steep slopes. In this case, there is a steep slope in this area. So the unhatched portions of the properties that we see are on a higher elevation. And from here, the property has a steep slope down to Brooklyn Street. So with the ESA, the ESA is like a layer with an additional set of requirements that applies on top of the zoning requirement. Coming back to the zoning, the neighboring property is within a zone called the institutional zone, and that is where the Valley Regional Hospital is located. And then we have the town of Kentville to the south. And this is a future land use. The subject properties and the neighboring ones are expected to be in the residential designation in the future. And these are some of the photographs of the subject property. On top, there is a key map for reference. This This is an image of the adjacent residential dwelling to the west, marked as red on the map. And this is again a residential dwelling located to the west of the subject property. And this is Keddy Road leading to the subject property, which is here. And this is a view of the subject properties. During the time of the site visit, the properties were being leveled and graded, being prepped for construction. And this area with the vegetation is the adjacent property, which has the Valley Regional Hospital. This is again another residential dwelling to the north of the subject properties. And this view is the view showing the exit to Keddy Road from the tiniest parcel. So a public information meeting was held for this application in July last year. The public shared a few concerns and comments. So the first concern or comment was about trespassing issues on Randall Road and neighboring properties to the north. So this is Randall Road here, and these are the subject properties. It is my understanding that the subject properties are not the ones solely responsible for the trespassing issues. And it could be because of the nature of Keddy Road and Randall Road. And as I mentioned previously, the subject properties are proposed to be accessed from Brooklyn Street, which might not contribute much to the trespassing issues in the future. And there were concerns regarding flooding on Brooklyn Street in the previous years. So we did pass on those concerns to the Department of Public Works, and it was agreed that a drainage plan will be required from the applicant at the time of permitting, at which stage the Municipal Engineering Department and the Department of Public Works will review the drainage plan to make sure that there are no issues. And there were concerns raised about the position of the new axis on the curved section of Brooklyn Street. Again, this was passed on to the Department of Public Works because and the department has confirmed that the proposal has passed the stop site distance requirements, and they did not indicate any other concerns. There were also concerns about the potential impact on property values. I'm not sure if I'd be able to make a comment on that because property values are determined by Property Valuation Services Corporation, PVSC. All properties are assessed by them. So, and then there were also concerns about dust and noise, which could result from construction activities. Again, that is not something we can control, but if the neighbors have any issues during the construction time, they could always reach out to the property owners, subject property owners, and request that it be taken into consideration. So in order for us to consider rezoning, it must be enabled by a policy within our MPS. And this is policy 5.3.3, which is what enables this rezoning. And this policy enables council to consider rezoning land from one zone enabled in a designation to another enabled within the same designation. So the policy directs us to this policy 3.1.3, which states permit within the residential designation all zones listed in policy 3.1.2 above. And this is policy 3.1.2. As we can see, both the residential 1 and 2 unit zone, which is a current zoning, and the proposed residential multi-unit R4 zone are listed within this policy. As a result, council is able to consider this rezoning. And policy 5.3.5 applies to all rezoning applications. So in order for staff to form a recommendation, we review if the proposal meets the intent of this policy. There are 3 criteria to this policy. I will review each one in detail. So the first criteria, we would check if it would be appropriate to place the proposed R4 zone on the subject properties. That is, if the intent of the R4 zone is being met through this rezoning. And this is the intent of the R4 zone, which states lands located in this zone are intended for the development of housing in higher density building types in strategic locations such as near main transportation corridors and near employment and commercial areas. The zone is intended to include residential units at a higher density in a variety of building types. So this is a portion of the Town of Kentville zoning map. And we have our subject properties here, which is located towards the periphery of our growth center, North Kentville Growth Center. And this is Town of Kentville. As we can see here, this blue portion of the map is the town's general commercial areas, which has a variety of commercial uses, and it is also a significant employment hub. And as I mentioned previously, the Valley Regional Hospital is located to the east of the property, which is again a significant employment hub. Also, as mentioned, the proposal is for 60 units, which aligns with the zone's objective to promote higher density housing. Additionally, there is also a small bridge here which connects Brooklyn Street to the main commercial area within the Town of Kentville, which also makes it walkable for the residents of this development. So we are confident that the proposal meets the intent of the R4 zone. And criteria B of policy 5.3.5. We would review if the impacts of the proposed development and other uses permitted within the zone are acceptable. So with regards to non-residential uses, both the R2 and the R4 zone permits a few lower impact commercial uses, which are usually preferred closer to residential uses. And with regards to residential uses, the current zone, which is R2, permits 1-unit dwellings, 2-unit dwellings, semi-detached, and group dwellings. These uses are also permitted within the proposed R4 zone. The R4 zone additionally permits townhouses, multi-unit dwellings, and residential facilities. But with regards to the number of residential units possible on the subject properties, with the current zoning, the property owners could have about 68 units as of right. This is calculated based on the land use bylaw requirements and the lot area. And with the proposed zoning, the R4 zoning, they can have a maximum of 76 units. But this would again depend on various other factors of the zone, like the additional setback requirements, the amenity space requirements of the R4 zone, the solid waste storage space requirement, and also there is increased parking space requirement for multi-unit dwellings within the R4. So again, as a reminder, the total number of units currently being proposed is 60 units, which is well within the permitted number in the R2 within the current zoning. And this is the final criteria of policy 5.3.5. So all applications are reviewed to assess if the proposals meet all the relevant criteria listed within this general policy. In this case, we have reviewed it against this policy, and the proposal is consistent with the intent of the municipal planning strategy. The proposal is not in conflict with any municipal or provincial programs, bylaws, or regulations. There is no financial impact on the municipality because of the proposal. The proposed residential use would be compatible with the surrounding residential uses. And there is adequate the property is adequate in terms of proximity to schools, recreation, and other commercial facilities. The school board has also confirmed the adequacy with regards to increased enrollment. And we did consult with the Department of Public Works regarding traffic hazards and congestion, and also access and egress, and they did not indicate any concerns. And we also consulted with the Kentville Fire Chief about emergency services, and again, there were no concerns. There is adequate sewer and water services, which was confirmed with the Municipal Engineering Department and the Town of Kentville. With regards to potential for flooding and serious drainage problems, as I mentioned earlier, the applicant is required to submit a drainage plan at the time of permitting. At that stage, this will be assessed by both the municipality and the Department of Public Works. And a recap of the process again, a public information meeting for the application was held on July 29 last year. And it was then staff prepared a report after the PIM, and this report was presented to PAC on December 10, again last year, and the application went to the council for a first reading on January 7th, and we are currently at the public hearing. Properties within 500 feet were notified about the hearing, and the public hearing was also advertised on our website and social media sites. Soon after the public hearing, there will be a second reading, at which time a decision will be made on the application by the council, and this will be advertised on our website, at which point a 14-day appeal period will begin. And that concludes my presentation. I pass it back to the chair for comments from public.
Thank you, Mr. Jacob. And is there any member of council that has any questions to the presenter? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Question of curiosity. For a high-intensity development, does the developer have an obligation to any type of contribution to enrichment of lifestyle for the community? And I'm thinking of things like parks, playgrounds, green space, contribution to the local community hall. Is there any obligation for high-intensity buildings for the developer to contribute to enhance lifestyle?
There is nothing that I am aware, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, there's nothing that I am aware of within the R4 or the R3 zones. Maybe within the comprehensive development zone, the R5 zone, but again, I'm not sure about that. I would have to confirm.
Okay, I don't see any other lights on, so we'll move on to the public part of this. If there's any member of the public who would wish to address council in this matter, please come to the mic, state your name and address for the record. And as a reminder, again, we have a 5-minute maximum time limit for each speaker. Oh, I'm sorry, we got a late light coming on here. Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My light wasn't going on for whatever reason, but just for a matter of clarification, I think I heard there was a request for a second access onto Brooklyn Street. I'm wondering if you might be able to clarify where that access point, because that is quite a sharp corner. I'm just wondering if we are aware where that access onto the Brooklyn Street would be.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just give me a second as I go back to the preliminary plan. So, as I mentioned during the presentation, the applicant is not required to submit a final plan at this stage, so we are not aware where this is the proposed access from Brooklyn Street, and during the public information meeting, we did receive similar questions about positioning of this access on a curved section. So we did reach out to the Department of Public Works, and we did pass on those concerns to them. They did not indicate any concerns. They said that the stop side distance requirements have been met, so they didn't indicate anything else with regards to that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go back to the public again. If you wish to come forward to this mic here, and if you have any questions or comments, now would be the time, and to a maximum of 5 minutes.
My name's Gary Robelshaw. I live on 1388 Sayerford Road, okay? With my wife, her name's Dorothy Gee. I guess my question is, what about the wildlife that live there and stuff? Like the deer are there like crazy, right? What are they supposed to do, right?
Do you have a,
We see deer all the time up there going across the river, going up the hill, right?
I'm not sure we have any regulations with regards to that. Maybe the provincial departments have, but
I don't know.
at the municipal
That's why I'm
level, we
asking.
don't have anything with regards to that I can give you information about.
Okay.
thank you for that good question, Lowell. All right, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, my name is
Okay. My name is Juanita Malley, and I live at 8543 Brooklyn Street. And my driveway, I have a seeing problem, and my driveway is very dangerous, so there's a curve going around. Have they changed the direction that they're going to take going in, making it safer coming out? They're going to have something that's coming in and coming out, so the traffic coming this way is going to see them. Because if they don't, we're going to have a disaster. Because when I come out of my driveway, you can't see anything coming up or going down. And I mean, you really got to pull out fast. Other than that, you'd get picked off. I mean, we've lived with that all of our life, but if you have another driveway that is on that curve, we're going to be in trouble. I'm just wondering, did you change that?
As far as I'm aware, they haven't changed the driveway position, but that is a conversation that they would need to have with the Department of Public Works, because we don't control the placement of the axis. And we did reach out to the Department of Public Works as part of the staff review process, and at that time they did not indicate any concerns with that.
Well, if you go up and you park in my driveway and you try to get out of it and see what I'm talking about. Because when you had a picture of it at the last meeting, it did not show proper. It didn't show that curve. It was flat, and that wasn't how Brooklyn Street goes. So that's my concern.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that forward, and I'm sure that to be part of the notes so that when the Department of Transportation or Public Works will take that into consideration. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just speak here, please, my name is Department.
Well, I'll just a second. Gary, I don't have any problem with it, but can everyone hear? I just want to make sure that you're heard, that's all, because we are recording this, okay? So as long as it can be loud enough that we can record it, that's fine.
Just to speak to Mr. McPherson's question a while ago about that driveway, we heard 2 or 3 times, if you're going to Rock Street, West Kentville, before you go around that sharp sign, there's that sharp corner, there's a crooked sign or slow sign there. And we heard they had to stay 200 feet or more to the east in order to put that driveway up to that property. That's what we was told. So they can't put it right on the corner. It has to stay to the east of that sign there on Brooklyn Street.
That would be good to know. Thank you, Gary.
That's what we was told. So
Yeah, well, thank you for that information. Thank you for that information. Okay, anyone else?
Chris Can, 1548 and 54 Baxter's Harbor Road. Not really my community, but I have, I wonder if you could you bring back up that the good picture of the community right behind the development. It's an aerial photo. There. So my question is, where's the dump relative to that? Because we know when we tried to close that there was not a liner put in. And in terms of the fishing in that flood zone there, I've heard, because I spent some time in the community, there's bass there, but I'm just wondering what the hydrology looks like, because that dump does leak. So both concerns for the residents who may end up living there, but also wondering if what kind of consultation was made with, that's a community, isn't it? Isn't that Meadowview? Isn't that the edge of Meadowview? Okay, that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you for bringing that forward. Sure.
Oh, yes, sir.
I don't know how to operate this.
I will help you with
Basic?
that.
All right. Good evening. My name is Tyra Innes Harvey, and I live on the Randall Road. And is this something I can operate from here, Alice? Or
I think you'd be able to.
can I put my goggles on? I'm going to try my very best at this. I worked really hard on it, so if
Yeah.
it blows up on us,
Just
I'm just
these
going to walk
buttons.
away and start chattering. Okay, so I represent my husband and my children, my parents and my mother-in-law. We all live on the Randall Road, and we call it Oakley Hill there, okay? So I'm going to present this really quick because I understand I've only 5 minutes, even though I own 7 properties, 5 are houses. And it's the capacity of the Randall Road to the east that runs from Sanford Road to Keddy, from Randall Road to the hospital. So I think it's about 5 acres, but I'm not quite certain. So my house is there, 272, and I'm going to go quick because I have 59 slides and found out yesterday that I've got 5 minutes. So,
That's,
okay.
well, that's the rules.
That's
I'm
the rules.
sorry.
We'll work along. I could have brought Nana here, and she'd tie us up for another 5 minutes, but we'll go. That's me. That's my house. That's it on a survey map. That's our PID. This is the other, we're going with the green now. This green one here is another family member at the corner of Sanford and Randall, 280, okay? And it's part of the Randall road bed, and you can see how it extends in the dotted line, and the house sits at the green dot there. I'm trying to move fast. This is an old picture from 1931. We can skip right over it, but it'll help you to realize that there was never a Randall Road there in 1931, and the Sanford Road did not come that close to the house that exists there today at 280. This is a more informative, easier to read photograph. If you don't like to go through it right now, we won't have to, but it basically says the dotted line in blue is where Sanford Road is. It's beautiful. I wish I'd have had this when I went through court, having to dole out these right of ways. The red dotted line is where the Randall Road sits today. No questions. Okay, I also have a house at the corner of Randall and Keddy, where another family member lives, and that's the remainder of the road bed to the Randall Road. Try not to go too fast here. That's the green dot. With it came a large portion of land that is vacant, and it shows as the massive amount of woods behind the subject property. There's one piece of land and one house between us there. It is also a piece of land that had original house on it. It belonged to John Keddy, and it was taken for taxes in the 40s. It was owned by the county until 2000. And in 2000, when they went to sell it, I tried to give them access to the Randall Road. As part of a purchase price, I tried to offer a right-of-way to everyone. As part of a purchase price, I tried to reduce the amount of money, offer more right-of-ways. County ended up selling it to $13.52 because you had to have access to it to purchase it. I'm trying not to go too quickly here. So in green, the dot is the original John Keddy house. It's no longer there. That is the Keddy land. That is the vacant land that I'm mostly heartbroken about because I spend a lot of time in those woods, spiritually speaking. And y'all can tell me, you know, hokey and everything, but we just went through a season of Christmas and giving in spirit that, you know, we spend billions of dollars on every year. So I sit in the woods, I pray. People go where they do. To abuse someone who has to take advantage of someone who has social anxiety and prefer to stay in the woods would be to abuse them for having a disability. I'm just going to throw that out there. This house 257 is a family member living in it, recently purchased from someone here in the crowd. Thank you. We'll just move along. That was in green on the map. It's also in green on this little spot, so you can see it had roads in front of it, behind of it, and the Randall Road generally just was not there at that time in the 31s. Now, another spot in green, I had to resurvey a piece of land so that I could build on this number 266 beside it. So my little land got smaller, and that's it there, sorry. And 266 is a house I'm trying to build on for my parents, and because it was landlocked, or because it's called a non-conforming piece of land, I'm only allowed to build 25% on it unless I came to council here and made an extreme application, much like what this people are making now, paid $1,000, rezoned it, no, sorry, I was supposed to have it consolidated and give it portion of my other property's road, this dotted line. They wanted me to give some of that to the frontage to the highway. If I did that, I would be unable to ever give frontage to my son at 1352 Keddy, or the large lot worth 257. And if you ask why, 1352 Keddy Road has no access to Keddy Road. Keddy Road is private property. This is the piece of land that I was adding on, and as recently as last week, someone called the county and sent them to me saying I didn't have a permit because you're not allowed to build in there, and I have gone far and wide to get the permit that I do have. I'm just going to leave it there. These are the 7 lots, 5 houses. This is them, and this is going to look kind of cute, but I'm just going to show you this because I thought it looks cute. See? See the crow? That's how I feel. That's me. That's my religious nature. You have the same low down here. I'm not going to take my time if you want to read it on the side. I think I'll put it on my social pages because I do not want to miss the opportunity to finish my presentation for short time. I'm representing 11 people here. You can see by the green dot, sorry, Google Map has green dotted on this one here where the original Randall Road is supposed to be in my neighboring property and where it does not come out on either end. You can also see that I have a driveway with inside a fence from my property that I access. Hope I'm not missing anything here. You can stop me anytime. So in 2009, we only owned this portion towards the Sanford Road. We since then bought the rest of it, but in 2009, the rest of it was at some point Z-class, which means it was maintained by the highways. We take care of it ourselves now. We are actually, I'm going to go right here and say, we purchased 259 and 266. They're not expensive because they have right-of-way problems. They have access problems, and so does this. The person applying for their permit to build has an access problem. They need to access through Brooklyn Street. The municipality could have done something with that, I'm sorry to say it, but they would not give access through that road. There are no accesses from Randall Road onto Keddy Road. So, here we go again. The province owns only one small portion of land at the top of the Keddy Hill. It was deeded out of a piece of land that belonged to Sidney Oikel in the 73, I think. And prior to that, okay, also as well, you'll notice this blue dot on the corner. That was a piece of land that belonged to that house there. It belonged to the Schofields. When it was sold, it never went with it. That piece of land belongs to the Schofields' house. The Randall Road is marked in red dots. Stop me. Oh, look, go back here. The Randall Road, Keddy Road, Schofield Road, Spencer Road, they're all, well, the Randall's not now because they took it off, but they are all being taken care of by the county, by the Department of Transportation, but they are privately owned. That's money being spent on people's driveways. That's just a driveway. It never should have happened. It was just promises, but it's got nothing to do with me. I'm good. This is the old map. I'm not going to look, you know, there's a picture. It shows that there was no Randall Road. There was no corner at Keddy. All these people that claimed that they had a right, that's past news. So there's a big battle. There's only 3 rights-of-ways, and I'm going to jump right to them in case I run out of time, but come back here. I want to show you. They were never registered. My husband and I found out that they weren't registered when we bought those other 2 properties, and that's because of their burden. They are limiting they put a responsibility on the other 2 parties, 3 parties that acquired them, sorry. There's only 1 left now that we don't own, and I'm not interested in it. I just did this for my family. We are going to live there. I got to keep moving. I'm sorry. I'm kind of running short. These are the details of the right-of-way. It basically says use does not in any way prove ownership. That's the laws. Okay. In 1842, this beautiful sketch painting was made from overlooking exactly that location, that we are speaking about today. This is from that. It's made by a map maker named Barley. All right. When they bought the land, they bought it from pictures and viewpoint. This is a picture of viewpoint. They bought that green stuff back there, and I can't draw on over the hill where it goes. But in viewpoint, this is what they were turned on, I guess. Maybe it's the wrong word to use, and I apologize. Look at all the vast open area. Well, they're showing pictures of our land and the hospital. So when they came to buy it, they were excited, but look what they ended up with. That's fine. I'm 40 feet away from them. There's a land between us, and I don't know where they go down over the bank there. Now, before they bought it, it was quiet, it was tranquil. To answer to the questions about wildlife, spirituality, meditation, before they came here, we spent a special day. That's my mom with the walking stick. She can't be here. She's in her final rounds of chemo. She's had her second battle of cancer, and I want them in this house I'm trying to build for 3 years now. And I had more than enough trouble getting my permit. And to have someone question my permit last week, that's why I'm here today. My road is private property, and I'm not going to let anybody use that. My mother's distant relative actually owned this land that we bought. Now, where am I going, Alice? I'm stuck. My flicker won't flick me any further. Do you know about that? I mean, I can just drop it right there and keep going.
You're well over
I'm probably well over my 5 minutes.
You are, Mrs. Harvey.
But my main goal was to put into the public light that there is right-of-ways, that there are only 3 right-of-ways across the Randall Road, and it just is not going to be used for access. And Nick Bentley was aware of that, and he was going to start using Brooklyn Street. I think if a gentleman wants to honor his word, and he doesn't want the world to be scared, and I have letters from my neighbors, so I'm
Yes.
also representing them. So when it comes time to say who represented or who was I here for, I can only say I am that group of 11 people. And you can add these letters to it or not, but if Nick wants to go on and be honored, maybe he could start with all the tractors that he has and make a driveway, because I didn't have a tractor, and I still managed to make one this winter. Okay? Any questions, any emails to me? This is way more, this is my life. I spent 30 years putting this together and battling for our rights, and I do sit in the woods and pray. And you'll notice, stop there, don't ask me why. There's a lot more to be said about it. These people in my community wear a crow's foot tag on their hand as a tattoo, and it is symbolic. And there's no one, it's an amount of love for the earth. It's the deer are running. There's more pictures there. Apparently, they're not going to show. The day I went in the woods and the tractor was just clawing the land, and I looked, and I have panned. There's a picture of the deer standing beside me. They're there, and they're running free. Last summer, the fox had her pups on the side of the hill.
Mrs. Harvey, you articulated your case very well. Thank you.
So
and I gave you 10
and
minutes.
I appreciate you. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I took 5 minutes. The first guy didn't.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Don't tell anybody else I give you double time, will you?
You're a nice guy. I give you double soup.
All right. Well, thank you. You articulated your case very well. Thank you. All right. So now I guess we will move on to our third item on the agenda. And I believe, Ms. Jacob, you were also presenting that. Just before we do that, I think the owner or the applicant would have an opportunity if they wanted to come forward, but I don't think that they're here. So we'll move on to the number 3 then. Thank you, Ms. Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an application for a text amendment to enable bed and breakfast operations within residential units in all zones that permit residential units. This is a bit different from the rezoning and the DA application. So text amendment applications, it usually applies to all areas within the county where the specific regulation or the text applies to. Again, the process here is similar to that of a rezoning and DA application. The first step is to receive a complete application, and the second is to organize a public information meeting. The public information meeting for text amendments are usually held in the council chambers, and it is chaired by the chair of the PAC. And the third step is a staff review, where staff reach out to other departments to gather their feedback and prepare a report. And the report is presented to the Planning Advisory Committee for their recommendation. If a positive recommendation is made to the council gives the application a first reading and then forward it to a public hearing. Again, the public hearing is open to the members of the public, where they can come in and share their feedback and comments with the council. Soon after the public hearing, there is a second reading. Council makes a decision at that time. And soon after that, it will be advertised, the decision will be advertised on our website, at which point a 14-day appeal period will begin. So there are two prompts for this amendment. First is an application that we have received. So the applicant has a property in Black River Lake, and the property has an existing dwelling. The applicant intends to operate a B&B within the dwelling. We do permit B&Bs as home-based businesses within a dwelling, but they are subject to additional requirements under home-based businesses. And one such requirement is frontage on a public road. In this case, the Black River Road that we see on this map is a private road, and as a result, the property does not have a public road frontage, because of which a B&B cannot be permitted. And the second prompt for the amendment is, in August 2024, the province released new registration requirements for short-term rentals. Short-term rentals would include Airbnbs, bed and breakfast operations, and a few other things. So it is now mandatory for short-term rentals to be registered with the province in order to operate legally. So for the registration process, the property owners are required to obtain a letter from the municipality confirming that the short-term rental meets the requirements of the land use bylaw. We have received a few applications for B&Bs, but in a few cases we couldn't issue the letter because the operations did not comply with the land use bylaw requirements. So this amendment is to also help ease a few requirements to help facilitate the provincial registration process. Before I move on to the proposal, I'll briefly explain what a bed and breakfast operation is. So a bed and breakfast operation, or a B&B, is a residential unit in which overnight accommodation is provided to the public, and meals may be included to overnight guests. So in order to operate a bed and breakfast within a dwelling, the dwelling has to be the principal residence of the owner of the operation. Bed and breakfasts are currently classified under home-based businesses within our LUB, and it is permitted within 1 and 2 unit dwellings outside of growth centers, and it is also permitted within the growth centers on one condition, that the properties have to be accessed via collector roads. B&Bs are also subject to certain other requirements under home-based businesses. So the proposal here is to amend the text of the land use bylaw to enable B&Bs within residential units in all zones that permit residential units. So if the amendment goes through, B&Bs would no longer be classified under home-based businesses, and they would no longer be subject to the additional requirements of home-based businesses within the LUB. So similar to short-term rentals like Airbnb, it will be a permitted use within a residential unit, and it will only be subject to the requirements of the zone in which it is located. However, a difference is that in case of Airbnbs, the owner is not required to reside within the dwelling, but for B&Bs, as I mentioned earlier, the dwelling has to be the principal residence of the owner. So, as I mentioned, it applies to all zones that permit residential units, and these are the various zones within the county that permit residential units, and it would apply to all these zones. With regards to impacts, we believe that it would be identical to that of a dwelling. So, say if a property owner has a dwelling with more than maybe 6 bedrooms, and if they decide to rent out 5 bedrooms within the dwelling, that would be more number of cars and more number of people on the property. A B&B would be similar to that. You can only rent out 4 rooms within a dwelling, or you can only use 4 rooms within a dwelling for a B&B. So that would mean 4 rooms for more guests and more number of cars, which would be similar to the long-term rental situation I just described. So a public information meeting was held for this application on October 29 last year. There were a few concerns and questions. The first one was regarding the proposed amendments' impact on housing. We don't believe that there would be a significant impact because, as I mentioned earlier, in order to operate a bed and breakfast operation, the dwelling has to be the principal residence of the owner of the operation. And also, housing is important, but so is tourism and economic development in the long run. And there were concerns about permitting bed and breakfast operations within the R1 zone. Again, going back to my example that I mentioned earlier, in the R1 zone, you could have a dwelling with maybe more than 6 bedrooms, and if you rent out 5 rooms within the dwelling, that would mean more number of cars and more number of people, which would be kind of similar to a bed and breakfast operation with more number of cars and people on the property. And there were also questions regarding Airbnbs, general questions, and there were also questions about parking requirements for Airbnbs and B&Bs. This is the enabling policy. So the policy states, amend the text of the land use bylaw provided the amendment is consistent with the vision, goals, and objectives of this strategy. So these are the various goals, objectives, and policies regarding tourism and economic development that are relevant to this application. This amendment would provide an opportunity for the municipality to encourage and promote entrepreneurship and tourism by supporting the existing visitor-oriented businesses and facilitating the development of new businesses within the municipality. And it will also ease certain requirements for bed and breakfast operations, which would provide more opportunities for these businesses to locate in diverse areas throughout the municipality. So the amendment would be consistent with these goals, objectives, and policies. And as I mentioned earlier, the amendment would apply to all zones in the municipality that permit residential units. So this includes zones within, most zones within the residential designation, commercial designation, agricultural designation, shoreline designation, and also the resource designation. So the first 3 objectives that we see on this slide relates to economic development objectives of the residential, commercial, and shoreline designations. So these objectives clearly show support for small businesses to locate within residential areas and support for businesses in general within commercial zones, and also encourage tourism development within zones in the shoreline designation. And policy 2.5.11 states, permit a variety of opportunities for visitor-oriented businesses in locations and at a scale consistent with the intent of the zones, enabled within the agricultural, resource, and shoreline designation, as well as the historic hamlet of Grand Pré. So this shows support for visitor-oriented businesses within the agriculture, resource designations, also the shoreline designation. So we are confident that the proposal is consistent with the intent of the municipal planning strategy. And again, a recap of the process. A public information meeting was held for this application last year in October, and the application was presented to PAC on December 10th. The council gave first reading to the application on January 7th, and we are currently at the public hearing. public hearing. All towns and villages within the municipality were notified, and all adjacent municipalities were also notified about the public hearing. The public hearing was also advertised on our website and social media sites. Soon after the public hearing, there will be a second reading, at which point a decision will be made by the council. And this decision will be advertised on our website, at which point a 14-day appeal period will begin for the application. And that concludes my presentation. I pass it back to the chair for comments from the public.
Thank you, Ms. Jacob. Does any member of council have any questions to Ms. Jacob on her presentation? Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Alice. I'm just wondering why in the Grand Prairie Heritage Conservation District that you're allowed to have one more bedroom than the rest of the areas.
I believe Trish would be able to answer that better than me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was something that was negotiated during the secondary plan of Grand Prairie. There's not really a better answer than that. It was just something that was negotiated.
Thank you. Just because I'm from Grand Prairie, I live there, I was just kind of curious why it was different. Thank you.
I thought maybe it was because of the very active counselor down there.
Good answer.
Could be. Thank you. Any other member of council have any questions to Ms. Jacob? Councilor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Jacob. So if a private home becomes a bed and breakfast, does that change the assessment or taxation of the property?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I'm not sure if I'm able to comment on that because property values are determined by Property Valuation Services Corporation of Nova Scotia. So I am not sure how what aspects they take into consideration to come up with the assessment, but yeah.
Maybe I can clarify my question through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the word assessment wasn't the right word to use there. It's more about taxation, municipal taxes. Does that change based on the fact that you are moving from specifically a dwelling, a home, to a home which becomes a bed and breakfast? So there is a change of designation of the property to a degree, and I'm just wondering if that results in a change in property taxes.
Director Javert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe I only have part of the answer to that. But from the county's perspective, it's still a dwelling. It's building code still sees it as a dwelling. So I can't confirm whether or not assessment would put any kind of commercial assessment to that, but I do believe that they are part of the province's data sharing with the short-term rentals, and this would qualify under that same legislation. So they'd be notified by another department within the province that that activity was occurring. So we'd need to see a change in the assessment prior to municipal taxes also changing.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, one final question for Ms. Jacob. I'm just curious if currently Airbnbs are permitted in all residential zones.
They are. So Airbnbs are permitted within all residential units and all zones that permit residential units, similar to B&Bs that we are proposing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now at this time I would invite any member of the public, if they wish to come forward to, they have any questions on this particular item, and as I stated before, that you would have a maximum of 5 minutes to bring your concern forward. I see no one getting up, so we will Move on then. Thank you very much, Ms. Jacob, for excellent presentation. And at this time, I would like to declare the public hearing at a close. And I would like to remind the public that these items will be on the council agenda later on this evening following this hearing, and you're certainly welcome to stay. Saying that, I think it might be appropriate to take a 10-minute recess before we go into the municipal council meeting. So I'm going to declare a 10-minute recess, and we will meet again in the council meeting in 10 minutes. And I would declare that all members of council are here and present, and that we will, as you know, if our screen is delayed, and if a counselor does not vote, then that would mean that they have voted to the negative unless they advise us otherwise. So if you, I just want to remind council of that. So we do have an agenda in front of you. And would somebody like to move the addition of, or move the agenda, please? And we do have some additions that have been added. Moved by Councillor Gates, second by Councillor Allen. All those in favor or against, please press your button. You're okay. Councillor Hiltz has advised he has voted for it. Motion carried. All right, we'll move on. Does any member of council wish to declare a conflict of interest in any of the upcoming items? Seeing none, we shall move on then to the approval of the minutes for January the 7th. Did anybody see any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing none, would somebody like to move the approval of those minutes, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Peckford, second by Councillor Harding. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Okay, motion carried. We'll move on to the business arising. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Planning Advisory Committee recommendations, recommendations will be presented by the chair, Councillor Lutz. Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor Corkum. The first item tonight is item 6A. The motion is that Municipal Council give final consideration to entering into a development agreement to permit the development of 2 multi-unit dwellings at Old Dyke Road, PID 55209530, New Minas, which is substantively the same, save for minor differences in form, as the draft set out in the report dated December 10th, 2024. I so move.
Okay. We have a seconder. Second by Councillor Gates. Any further discussion? Okay. No? Okay. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Okay, motion carried. Councillor Lutz.
Thank you,
6B.
Mayor. That Municipal Council gives second reading to the application to rezone the properties located on Brooklyn Street, PID 55047856, 55472955, 55473987, North Kentville, from the residential 1 and 2 R2 zone to the residential multi-unit R4 zone, as described in Appendix D of the report dated December 10th, 2024. I so move.
Okay, and second by Councillor Best. Any further discussion? Councillor McPherson.
Yes, I would just like to, through you, Mayor, I would like to acknowledge and thank the residents of North Kentville who took the time this evening to come out and express their feelings about the proposal. I understand it's still just second reading, but I think it needs to be acknowledged that these individuals did take the time to come out this evening and to express what's on their mind and their concerns, and I think it's important, so I want to acknowledge and thank them.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor or against, please press your button. Motion carried. 6C, Councillor Lutz.
The Municipal Council gives second reading to amendments of the text of the Land Use Bylaw to enable bed and breakfast operations within residential units in all zones that permit residential units as described in Appendix A of the report dated December 10th, 2024. I so move.
Okay. Second by Councillor Hill. Allen, I mean. Sorry. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor or against, please press your button. Motion carried. Okay, we'll move on to 6D, Councillor Lutz.
The Municipal Council give first reading to and hold a public hearing regarding the application to rezone 6746 and 6754 Highway 1, PID 55154025, 55154017, and 55450936, Coldbrook, from the residential 1 and 2 unit R2 zone to the residential mixed density R3 zone as described in Appendix C of the report dated January 14th, 2025. I so move.
Okay, second by Councillor Harding. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor or against, please press your button. Motion carried, and the last one, next public hearing date, Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. The next public hearing date will be held in these chambers on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 6 p.m. prior to the regularly scheduled council meeting.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to number 7, administration. Municipal clerk to present a recommendation, the proclamation request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We received a request from the Canadian Amyloidosis Support Network, and this is the second time that we received a request from this organization for a proclamation. We had this proclamation last year for the first time. And for anyone who's not familiar with this disease, I certainly had to look it up last year. Amyloidosis is a group of complex, rare diseases caused when an abnormal protein called an amyloid deposits in various locations throughout the body, leading to organ impairment or failure. So the recommended motion is that Municipal Council proclaim March 2025 to be Amyloidosis Awareness Month in the municipality of the County of Kings.
Okay. Moved by Deputy Mayor Peckford, second by Councillor Hiltz. Any further discussion? All those in favor or against, please press your button. And thank you to the municipal clerk for pronouncing that for me. Motion carried. All right, we'll move on to Engineering Public Works. Director Brad Kerrigan presenting a detailed design approval for Canning WWTF expansion project.
Put this up and pretend I'm tall. Thank you very much, Mayor. Yes, I'm here today to look for detailed design approval, request for decision on our Canning wastewater treatment plant facility expansion. Just a little bit of background on the facility itself. Canning Wastewater Treatment Facility was originally constructed in 1973. In 2004, there were upgrades to the pump station, the lift stations that's at the end of the driveway, as well as the UV system. The project that we're looking for, the detailed design, accommodates expected future community growth with both existing and future growth. There was two options that pre-design looked at. One was optimization of existing lagoons, and a second option was looked at, which was construction of a brand new sequence batch reactor, or SBR, mechanical plant, similar to the one that we have currently in operation in Avonport. The reason I'm here today is because the approval of this magnitude, of this cost, is required by council as per policy FIN 05006, section 17.3C. Project timeline. So this project the need was originally determined in 2022. Preliminary engineering was contracted and completed by Dillon Consulting just recently here around Christmas time. If approved, then the detailed design would be completed by the second quarter of 25-26, and we'd be able to tender and start construction in the later stages of 2025, whether it's quarter 3 or quarter 4. Summary of work of what we're looking at for upgrades and expansion for Canning is, to start with, additional aeration in cell 1 and cell 2, very similar to what we've done in the regional sewer treatment plant here this past year. As well, it would be to build, construct, and implement a new screening building on site, very similar to some of the other screening projects that I've been in front of you before, with additional workspace and washroom facilities within that new screening building. We would also require modifications to the existing force main and the gravity main that feeds that plant. We've also asked the engineer to allow for road access and future geotube pads so we can desludge the plant down the road, as well as have a service road installed so that when we do desludge the Canning sewer treatment plant, we have a way of getting trucks in and out to do that desludging activity. Engineering services in general include the detailed design activities, support our procurement team in-house, as well as provide critical construction support at any key milestone dates of the project. Just to give you a financial impact of the full project, in 2024, the total project was projected to be $2,070,000. Of that, the engineering budget was $260,721. We've currently, on the preliminary engineering, already spent a little more than $69,000. This proposal in front of you today is to approve $185,243, which would allow a remaining engineering budget. So this would be done within budget with a surplus of just over $6,000. That removed from the total overall project budget, as indicated on the screen, would leave a little more than $1.8 million for the construction. And recommendations here, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions to the director on his? No. Would somebody like to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor McPherson.
Thank you very much.
Second by Deputy Mayor Peckford. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Okay, motion carried. Next item on the agenda is amendments to policy FIN-05-009, personal property tax exemption, and Manager of Revenue Scott McKay will be presenting. was looking around for you. Didn't see you over there. Director Barr, you got a comment?
Just, Mr. Mayor, I think that there was one agenda item just missed around adoption of a policy change prior to Mr. McKay's presentation.
9A? Okay, so, did I thought we passed it. We did?
That one, I believe, Mr. Mayor, was brought up in committee of the whole, so this is the recommended 7 days now, or the last council meeting rather gave 7 days notice. So
Oh.
the motion is to approve.
So we need a motion to approve. I apologize. Moved by Councillor Lutz, second by Councillor Harding. All those in favor or against, please press your button. As the later things go, the sharper I get less. All right, motion carried. Thank you. Now, Manager McKay.
Mayor, Council, appreciate your time this evening. So I'm here this evening to discuss some proposed changes to policy FIN 05009, Personal Property Tax Reduction Policy. And hopefully this will work. So the recommendation this evening will be that Municipal Council give 7 days notice per Section 48(1) Municipal Government Act to amend policy FIN 05-009 Personal Property Tax Reduction as detailed in the February 4th, 2025 request for decision. So the proposed amendments for the policy this year are to increase, first of all, the qualifying household income threshold from $46,000 to $47,000, and to increase the maximum exemption offered to households from $560 per year to $580. Calculation to determine both of these figures is built into the policy itself. And I'd like to provide you a little bit of background on the policy. The available data that we have in our financial system goes back to 1998, and during that tax year, the municipality offered a reduction of property taxes of up to $60 for all senior households in the municipality with a total gross income of less than $13,000. In that year, 498 households participated. Over the years, these numbers have increased to what is proposed for 25-26, a maximum reduction again of $580 and a threshold income level of $47,000. In addition to the income qualifying changes, the seniors only requirement was also amended to make the policy open to all ages. In the last several years, the municipality has significantly increased the budget for this policy. In 2018, we budgeted $329,000 for the reduction, and that year more than 1,300 participants applied for reductions of up to $266 apiece. That year we granted more than $341,000 in total property tax reductions, and by 2022, property tax assessments started to experience larger than average increases, and the municipality increased the budgeted amount for the program by almost 60% that year, following a review of the policy. In 2023, the program peaked with a total of more than $866,000 granted. In 2022 and 2023, the municipality increased its efforts in marketing the program and experienced an increase in participation, as you can see from the chart. In 2024, we saw a bit of a drop in the uptake of the program to a level staff feel will likely be sustainable. The pullback may be attributed to a proof of income requirement which was instituted last year. This past year, in 2024-25, we had budgeted $912,800 and it was utilized at a rate of just under 91%. granting property tax reductions of $829,111. The budgeted amount for the coming year is proposed to be set at $889,720. If approved, in addition to mailing applications directly to the 1,540 active program participant households, staff will continue to promote the program through social media, the municipal website, the tax bill newsletter, and the MOK Today e-newsletter, and also all customer-facing staff look for opportunities on an ongoing basis to either introduce or remind property owners of the policy when the opportunity arises. So once again, the recommendation this evening is that Municipal Council give 7 days notice per Section 48.1 Municipal Government Act to amend policy FIN 05-009, personal property tax reduction as detailed in the February 4th, 2025 request for decision. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. McKay. Any questions to Mr. McKay? And I might say that it's great that we're helping those that maybe need it the most. So that's good. All right, I guess I don't see any, so we'll call for the question. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Oh yeah, I guess you moved by Councillor Best, second by Councillor Lutz. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Thank you, Councillor Best. Every once in a while I fall asleep. That's all right? My age break. Thank you, Mr. McKay. Okay. We'll now move on to Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority's fiscal 2025 to 2026 operating capital budget. And Tyler Honeywood, our new manager of financial reporting, will be presenting. Tyler.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tyler Honeywood. I've been in the role for Manager of Financial Reporting now for about a month now. Tonight I'm going to do two brief presentations, beginning with the Valley Waste budget. Some key points here. The origin of this content would have been presented on January 21st, 2025 to the Committee of the Whole meeting from Andrew Garrett. Some brief overview here, and I'll touch on later as well. The operating budget for Valley Waste is projected, balanced budget, projected to be $13,249,121. There's a capital program that's going to amount to $4,665,000, and I'll allude to this later, but the municipality share for this budget is going to be $5,512,343. I refer to the Valley Waste IMSA 22 because it's really why we're here tonight, and that states that no later than 30 days before the beginning of the fiscal year, the parties must consider, and if deemed appropriate, ratify in accordance with Clause 5, the annual operating plan and budget approved by the authority. So in this budget, there's some assumptions that have been made. The first is really the only assumption actually being made here is that the budget is based on the municipality of the County of Annapolis being a party to the IMSA as of April 1st. And I think it's important to note that the contributions are based off from the parties is an equal distribution between uniform assessment and population numbers. So with the inclusion of the County of Annapolis, that is driving down our allocation numbers for this current fiscal year. If the party, and just to note here, our contribution is just slightly over 58%, whereas in last year it was just slightly over 73%. So we're seeing a reduction in our contribution as a result of the new party. If this party status is not reached by April 1st, Annapolis County is anticipated to be included under an interim service agreement equivalent to the municipal contribution. As a result, from our perspective at this point, we do not anticipate the budget that's being presented to have any material changes as that wasn't to become ratified in terms of the Annapolis County as of April 1st. Getting into the operating budget for Valley Waste, we're seeing a 13.7% increase. And that is driven by a curbside collection contract that we're currently in that we began in April of 2020. As a result, there's been many economic headwinds that have increased costs. So we see a large increase in the collection contract that is really driving this price. Partially offset by extended producer responsibility, which is a fee that producers pay for the distribution of their products. Andrew Garrett would be the expert on this, but what we need to know about this is it's going to be an additional revenue that's coming into Valley Waste that we're going to start seeing in December of 2020. From a capital budget perspective, for Valley Waste, they're making some large some expansions here of the eastern center of the transfer station. This was a facility that was designed for garbage and only garbage, and as a result, over the coming years, they've really increased their output, and they need to improve that facility to be able to offer the deliverance of service that they want to. Another large capital investment that Valley Waste is making is a construction, demolition, and metal pads. They've seen is a trend over the last at least 2 or 3 years where that's being utilized. There's being more construction in the area. As a result, there's more scrap metal, and they need to be able to expand that to be able to improve their operations. It's important to note that both the transfer station and the metal pads are going to be funded through the infrastructure reserves of $3,050,000 that we see listed below. It's also important to note that Valley Waste has typically financed their capital expenditures through debt issuance. And another note there for the municipality is even though we are guaranteeing that debt, it's not part of our calculation when we're looking at the thresholds and the financial indicators. Just thought I would mention that on this slide. So to bring it back to Kings County in terms of our contribution, we're seeing an operating contribution increase as a result of the collection contract. And then from a capital contribution perspective, we're seeing a drop of roughly $29,000 as a result of more parties being part of the authority with Valley Waste. So as a result, our total contribution for the coming fiscal year is going to be $5,512,343. Which leads me into my recommendation that Municipal Council approve Valley Region Solid Waste Resource Management Authority Fiscal 2025-2026 operating and capital budget as attached to the request for decision dated February 4th, 2025. I now welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Tyler. Any questions to Tyler on his report? And I know in my short period of time, Council, being the chair of Valley Waste, I've certainly had my eyes open to, first of all, Valley Waste and Kings Transit has been let run down a bit, and now it's got to the point where, like the buses in Kings Transit, Valley Waste, it really needs some work. And something else that's very alarming is that increasingly they're finding more things, explosive materials and things like Sharpies in the garbage that are dangerous to the employees and stuff. So it's as time goes on, I think there's going to be some more preventive measures, but I can tell you in a little short time, and I'm sure Councillor Lutz knows, it's been an eye-opening experience. So it is kind of shocking when we're talking an extra $1.5 million. That's not an easy thing for this municipality to come up with, but at the end of the day, it's probably going to be something that's necessary. Thank you, Tyler, and I don't want to digress, but I just wanted to back up the fact that there's lots of reasons for these additional costs, that's for sure. Anyway, I don't see any other questions, and I'll stop my rambling, and if somebody'd like to make a motion, moved by Councillor Lutz, second by Councillor Allen, All those in favor or against, please press your button. Motion carried, thank you. And so now we'll ask Tyler to come back and do the King's Transit. Good news also.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now we're going to be talking about the King's Transit budget for the coming 2025-2026 fiscal year. The origin of this content came from the community of the whole meeting on January 21st, 2025, presented by Dwight Wynot. Some high-level details here. Core operating, and this is where some confusion in terms of the appendixes. There's many budgets in there, but the one that we really want to focus on is the core operating budget. For this coming year, it's projected to be $2,618,945, which is a 9.5% increase. The capital budget is projected to be $5,510,000, and it's important to note, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, that is being driven by the electrification of the existing fleet. From the municipality's perspective, our total share, and I'll expand the capital and the operating breakdown a little bit later, but our total contribution at this point is $1,225,462. And much like the last discussion we had, this refers to KTA IMSA 15B, which states no later than 30 days before the fiscal year, the party should consider, and if deemed appropriate, ratify in accordance with Clause 7, the annual operating and budget approved by King's Transit Authority. So that's why we're here. The assumptions that are built in this budget is that there's some new funding formulas that are being investigated, considered, that could change the ownership structure. At this point, there's nothing solidified in that avenue, but we're working off the assumption that the parties to that ownership structure will remain status quo for the 2026 fiscal year. From an operating budget perspective, we're seeing a 9.5% increase to $2,618,945. The notable driving force of that change, and Mr. Wynot had alluded to this, was they do have an aging fleet. When you look at the kilometers on their buses, they're very, very near, if not past, their useful life, which as a result, that's driving maintenance expenses. When we look at their forecast for this current fiscal year, that was one of the elements that really exceeded their budget totals. We should expect to see that as a status quo going forward until the average age of that fleet is reduced significantly. Another additional in terms of changes is projected fares are going to be higher in this coming fiscal year as a result of increased ridership. They've done some work on the advertisement side, but they really anticipate they're going to see some fare increases, and with those do come variable costs such as fuel as a result of providing more routes. From a capital budget perspective, and these are talking about a big program here, right? It's going to cross multiple years, and when we talk about the electrification of buses, there's a lead time involved with obtaining those assets. There's an estimate, somewhere between a year, maybe potentially 2 years before we actually get those assets in place. So the $12.5 million it's been earmarked for the investment period hasn't fully been utilized. And we do have, but it's still a priority. The capital reserves show an overutilization by 2026, 2027. I do know there's potentially some grants coming this way. I don't want to comment on those too much right now, but what we need to consider is that if capital reserves are overutilized, those need to be funded by additional grants, debenture funding, or additional capital contributions by the parties. And I think this is a point to emphasize as well. It's a big capital project, but what our recommendation, and I'll bring this up a little bit later, is that since the deployment plan for the electrification project has not been finalized, including the route and infrastructure details, it is the staff's recommendation that the capital budget be approved contingent on the completion of electric bus infrastructure deployment plan and a related and a related financing plan approved by the parties.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. And so any questions to Tyler on his report and recommendation? Councillor Gates.
Just for clarification, does any of the green technology fall under PCAP funding?
I'm gonna phone a friend here.
CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So this is a bilateral, their funding is coming from a bilateral agreement between the province and the feds under the ISIP program. So that's where that money is coming from, not PCAP.
Okay, anyone else? Again, I hate to be the bearer of gloom and doom, but the buses are in pretty rough shape, but nothing to do with the roads they're traveling on, I'm sure. Anyway, anyone else? Okay, all those in favor or against? Yeah, okay. Councillor Gates, second by Councillor Lutz. All those in favor or against, please press your button. I like to move things forward, but a little fast. Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Tyler, for your two presentations, and welcome aboard. We borrowed Tyler from Acadia University. We were quite pleased to do that. All right, Committee of the Whole recommendations. We have included in your package addition to the reserve for the Annapolis Valley First Nations, or yeah. Where's that at? I've been flying through here, so. Scott, do you have that right in front of you? Thank you. Got too much paperwork going on here. Okay, and here's the recommendation that Municipal Council direct the mayor to respond to the correspondence from Indigenous Services Canada expressing the complete support of the municipality of the County of Kings for the proposed addition to reserve for Annapolis Valley First Nations. So, we have any, okay, we got moved by Councillor Harding, second by Councillor Best. Any further discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor or against, please press your button. Okay, motion carried. Now for the B, that municipal council provides 7 days notice per 48-1 Municipal Government Act to adopt amendments to policy FIN-05-003 fees as detailed in the January 21st, 2025 request for a decision. So we have a mover, moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Lutz. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor or against, please press your button. Okay, motion carried. Now we'll move on to C, that municipal council approve a change order to Dillon Consulting for additional professional services related to design upgrades at the screening building projects in Aldershot and Avonport locations in the amount of $62,600.80 for design and for $4,673.47 for an additional construction management services, both amounts including non-recoverable HST. So we have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Sappington, second by Councillor Lutz. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying or against by pressing your button. I was amazed by the exact 80 cents or 47 cents. That's right down to the nickel, eh? So, Councillor Gates, you in favor of this? Councillor Gates has confirmed he's in favor. Thank you. And now for 9D, that, I'm sorry, 10D. Getting off track here. Municipal Council approve a change order to CBCL Limited for additional professional services related to design upgrades and geotechnical investigation for the lift station project in Aylesford at AD2 in the amount of $82,662.30, including non-recoverable HST. Any, no? Okay. Would you have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Gates, second by Councillor McPherson. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Motion carried. Okay, thank you. Now for number 11, a Diversity Kings County Committee recommendation. Councillor Sappington to read the recommendation as chair of Diversity Kings Committee. Councillor Sappington. Get you on there. There we go.
Thank you, Chair. That Municipal Council complete the VANSTA Overcoming History training by the end of the calendar year and extend the opportunity for this training to other municipal councils within Kings County. I so move.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Second by Councillor Hiltz. Okay, now it's open for discussion. Councillor Sappington.
If I may, Chair, when this was actually suggested by one of our community representatives, and then it was seconded by Councillor McPherson, and then it was actually other representatives from other municipalities that requested that we extend an invitation to them as well. And I'd like to also point out that every single staff member that works for Kings County is expected to take this training. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Just a quick comment. You had said by the end of the calendar year? Was that? I'm sorry. Can you
Yes,
repeat?
it was by the end of the calendar year. Yes.
Okay. And how long a course is this?
That I do not know. About half a day? Half a day or a day.
Okay. All right. Half a day. Okay. Thank you. All right. Any further questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor signify by or against. Please press your button. Okay, all in favor? Motion carried. Thank you, Councillor Sappington. Now we will move on to board and committee reports. So we have the Regional Emergency Management Advisory Committee report has in your package from Dan Stovall. Does anyone have any questions on Dan's report? No, we'll move on to the Annapolis Valley Library report submitted by Councillor Lutz. Do you have anything you want to add to that report, Councillor Lutz?
Just briefly, I wanted to build upon something you mentioned earlier, Mayor, about Valley Waste and King's Transit, that the library is in a very similar situation and that it's not been resourced appropriately for several years, and now we're facing potential cost increases in the years to come. The hope is that the provincial government will be bearing the brunt of those, but that's under negotiation right now, and I'll keep council updated as we go forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Lutz? No, we'll move on then to Kentville Joint Service Fire Services. Councillor Hiltz, do you have anything to add to your report?
No, I don't.
Okay. Any questions to Councillor Hiltz? No? Okay. Committees of council, are there any verbal reports that anyone would like to make? No? And okay. We'll move on to external boards and committees. Are there any verbal reports that anyone would like to make for that? Okay. I will say that I just quickly, I just got back from Regional Waste Authority meetings up in Elmsdale, and that was my first experience. It was a bit of an orientation, and so it was more of a learning experience than anything, but there's a lot of things going on with that, and I look forward to maybe learning a little bit more about it and bringing it back to council in the future time. But there's many regions throughout Nova Scotia for waste, and one thing that I learned while I was up there, I think that we are at least on par or ahead of the game than most of the other areas. So I think that I would give kudos to our manager, Andrew Garrett. I think is on top of things, and so we're very fortunate. Unfortunately, I think we're coming from behind to get forward, but I think there's some new things on the horizon that will be a good thing. So I just wanted to bring that forward. And unless there's anyone else, no other. So I'd like to have a motion from somebody to receive those all those reports for information. Moved by Councillor Gates, second by Councillor Lutz. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Okay, motion carried. Correspondence from the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, Industrial Inquiry Commission reviewing of Canada Post. This is just for information. I think we've all had it in our package, unless you have any questions or comments. Okay, we'll move on. To the 2025-01-17 Minister of Emergency Management, moving forward consistent with the impact of emergency response. This again is for information, and it'll be on, we also have it on the next item of correspondence. Any comments there? No. Okay, we'll move along then to response to the Minister of Emergency Management, response from King's Remo. And again, that's also for information. Anyone have any comments on that? All right, so more correspondence continued. The Kentville Business Center support of Regional Recreation Center. That's becoming a hot topic. Matter of fact, I met with a couple of people today, so lots of people are getting on board with that. Any comment there? Hopefully we'll look forward to the business community coming forward with the dollars to help pay for it then. All right, we'll move on to 2025-01-28 Old Orchard Inn. They are a support of the regional complex, and that again is for information. And matter of fact, the owner was in my office today too, so he's quite. They're quite supportive of the project. So, if I could get a motion to receive all the correspondence, please. Moved by Councillor Lutz, second by Councillor Hiltz. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Motion carried. So at this time, we did have about an hour meeting with the MLAs, and Deputy CAO Rob Frost will be presenting along with MLA Julie Van Axum. We also had the Minister of Finance and Municipal Affairs, John Lohr, which is a very busy time of the year, so we're very fortunate to get them here. And Mr. Frost.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. As had been stated when we talked about having this meeting, we said that we would report back to Council. So here's a brief presentation. So yesterday morning, the meeting was held with, as the Mayor just mentioned, MLA Minister Lohr and MLA Van Exen, along with support staff Josh Isis and Peter Harrison. And they met with the Mayor, the CAO, myself, and Director Javrik. We kind of had a quick agenda for them because we knew that their time was quite limited and that we wanted to get in and out. So the first thing that we talked about was if there was anything that the province wanted to to bring to us. One item that was brought up was the work on Chapel Road and when that would be commencing, which you heard about a bit more already this evening. The second topic was, which was one of the reasons that we instigated that meeting, was funding supports for those experiencing homelessness. The statements of provincial interests and roads were the topics we had on our agenda. And of course, we did chat about some other things. So the first one, funding for homelessness. What was really stressed by the provincial leaders was the amount of money that this provincial government has put into to assist with homelessness, particularly in this area and the organizations that are in this general area. They talked about the initiatives such as the pallet shelters, numerous affordable housing projects, and other funding that they provide to nonprofit organizations. They've also said that they will put us in touch with representatives of the Department of Opportunities and Social Development to discuss further the amount of funding that is currently being provided. And a separate RFD will be provided to Council regarding open arms at our next meeting. Secondly, there was discussion in the planning realm, specifically about the statements of provincial interests and how that can affect planning in general. There is a process currently underway or just starting where the municipalities are going to be consulted on the current statements of provincial interests, or SPIs as they're called. Popular one always, and important to, of course, the municipality as well as the provincial government, is roads. Certainly, I know as elected officials at every level you hear complaints, and most people aren't too concerned about whether it's our road or the province's road or somewhere in between. So we had a good discussion on on roads and how we can work together to hopefully improve all of the roads in the municipality. And again, as some of you were here, would remember the presentation that were made on the 1995 J-class and the proposal that we had brought. And they've asked us to bring that back to the current government, so we will be doing that as well. We had a brief discussion just generally in passing about the Wellness Center and some of the discussion that's happening in the community. And one of the main discussions that happened was really around how we can work better together and better communicate the projects that both the province are completing as well as the municipality, and of course make sure we're using those resources to most benefit. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I provide a recommendation that Municipal Council receive the February 4th, 2025 briefing regarding the February 3rd meeting with the MLAs for information.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. It's not a question, it's more of a comment. Would you rather me wait till it's moved and seconded, or would you permit me to say my comment now? You're good? It's late in the evening. Thanks. So I really appreciate the fact that the mayor and staff and the MLAs were able to come together so quickly to address this item, and I had actually was going to request to add this to the agenda tonight, and then when we received the briefing this afternoon, I was really thrilled to see that and to have an update from staff. And this is more just a comment, I think, for staff to consider while we're putting together the upcoming RFD, because it's something I've been thinking a lot about since our last meeting, and what our roles and responsibilities are in regards to this issue. So initially when the ask came, I felt very much like it was outside of the budget. I've been on the Audit and Finance Committee for 8 years, and I do not like spending outside of our budget that we work really hard on and staff works really hard on. And a lot of consultation and thought goes into that budget. So I'm not one to make on-the-cuff decisions about anything. I'm also very cognizant of roles and responsibilities when it comes to council and the province. And, you know, having been on the NSFM board and the president, I know how quickly the province can react and download things onto municipalities, and we all have to be very aware of that, because even unintentionally, even trying to do a good thing, you can end up overstepping and then filling in where the province should be acting, and then ending up with an annual cost that's entirely outside our scope, and that we're using property tax dollars in ways we never intended to. So I'm just very conscious of those two things, but was thinking about it, and I was thinking about the gray area in which we do fill in oftentimes when the province doesn't go far enough. So I was thinking, looking at our vision grants last year, like we did provide grants to the Valley Regional Hospital Foundation and the Soldiers Memorial Hospital, for example. And that is sort of that gray area where the Department of Health doesn't go far enough, and where the county is asked by a nonprofit that's trying to fill a need to help support them, and they ask our municipality, other municipalities, private sponsors, etc. And then I was thinking about the Valley Community Learning Association, where again, they're providing education to people in our community that's not being provided by the province, and that's a gap that we fund. We put municipal tax dollars into through our $3 million grant program, you know, year over year. The Kings County Valley Resource or Volunteer Resource Center is another one where we fill in that gray area, not on our own, but in support of nonprofits in our community that are already doing that work. And I really see Open Arms no different than any of those other organizations that are filling in a gray area where the province's Department of what was known as Community Services and now has a new name, and Housing have fallen short, and that there are people working in the community to fix that issue. And I think that for them to ask us for support after I thought about it for, you know, over and over for the last couple of weeks is actually really justifiable, and that in an emergency situation, which we're all seeing in our communities, that it isn't a bad thing for us to go to the table and find a way to help support them in just filling that gap where there are people homeless in our community, and we're paying for the ramifications of homelessness anyway through people in the libraries who are requiring extra support from our librarians, through Valley Waste having to travel to different encampment sites once people move on and have, you know, extra trucks out there trying to clean up different messes, through RCMP who are being called unnecessarily in our community for people who just don't have the supports that they need in our community. So I think in a lot of ways we are already paying for a big price for people who are unhoused and not being supported in our community. And I would rather our municipality provide funding on the front end and prevent some of those issues from happening, or help out those organizations that are doing the work to help those people before they become an issue for the RCMP and for Valley Waste and for our libraries and for our local businesses who are really struggling with what to do with some of these folks during the day. And you can see it if you go to a lot of our different communities. So I wanted to put that out there. My intention was to come in tonight and request for a motion that we do actually support them. Maybe it's not to the tune of the $103,000 that the ask was. Maybe it's something slightly less that would be able to kickstart the program, a $50,000 contribution that would just get them through February or March. I'm not sure what the appetite of council is this evening. I didn't want to put anyone in a situation that no one was expecting tonight, so I was reluctant to know how to approach it. But I'm also reluctant to wait for a staff RFD because it's the middle of winter and this issue is right in our faces, and there are people who really need help. So those are my comments. I don't know if there's any support for that type of motion tonight, but I'll leave it at that and look forward to, I hope that that I've made my point clear tonight, that I think there is a role for us to play, and I think we should be involved. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you got a little off track, Lo. The meeting we had with the MLAs was we covered a lot of issues. I think you more pointed out a single issue, but I was very appreciative that they came to the table at the last minute. I mean, they're very, very busy right now, and then of course with the thing with Trump and everything else that was going on. So it was really nice that we have the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Municipal Affairs right here in our community, and to have their ear for a little while. And we talked about a lot of other things too, like smart growth, common sense, a little bit about some agricultural land. We talked about the rec center, and I think that we were very, very, very fortunate to have them here. I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Lutz, but we're on this motion for the meeting that we had. That maybe is a separate thing, and you'd certainly be welcome to bring that forward. That's your prerogative. Okay. Any other questions to the deputy CAO about the meeting with the MLAs and the minister. Okay, all right. Oh, we got Councillor Best.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. It was interesting you said about farmland. Can you maybe talk a little bit what they discussed about the farmland?
Well, we just talked that maybe down the road where we need to make some changes to our MPS, and then basically the comment was, well, bring it forward and then we'll see. No promises on anything. No promises for money. No promises on anything. But bring it forward. At least they're willing to sit down and talk to us. That's
Just a quick question, if you may, Mayor. Farmland, you're talking about small lots. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Thank you.
You were worried about your farm? Councillor Sappington.
I just wanted to say that when we were doing our strategic planning and we were discussing the importance of advocacy, I just wanted to say thank you for making that happen so quickly, and I am very appreciative of Minister Lohr and MLA Julie Van Exen to also show up and for you to be able to make those discussions happen so quickly. Thank you.
I think it was more the staff, the CAOs and Trish. They probably got them, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say that at that meeting was Minister Lohr's assistant has changed. His new assistant, by the way, is Josh Isis, if you're looking to get a hold of him. And we were very pleased to have the minister's assistant, Peter Harrison, here too. So you know, we had some pretty good coverage, and I know Julie Van Exen is new, but she's certainly interested in helping out in any way she can. Yeah. Anyway, any more comments or questions to the deputy CAO? Okay. Would somebody like to move receipt of that move by Deputy Mayor Peckford, second by Councillor Best? All those in favor or against, please press your button. Okay, motion carried. So, is there any other business to come to council? Councillor Sappington.
I would like to, through you, Mayor, take a moment just to remind everyone about the African Heritage Month Proclamation event that is going on February 6th, right here at Council Chambers at 6 o'clock.
Thank you for that. And I would also encourage everyone to be here as a kin, and I've been invited to attend the Southwest Nova down in Digby, and I'm going to go down there on, I think, the 15th of February. So we're trying to do our part, that's for sure. That's good. All right. All right. That's we shall then move on. If there's any member of the public who would like to come and have any comments to council, I would invite them to come forward. And as usual, there's, excuse me, up to 2 minutes, and I would ask you come forward, state your name and your address, and if you have any comments, and please keep them to 2 minutes. Oh, just a second, Leanne. I forgot to turn that mic on.
Oh,
there
okay.
you go.
You probably remember me from the presentation I gave a few weeks ago. I'm the Executive Director of Open Arms. I really appreciate that the staff, your staff were so quick to get a meeting with the MLAs, and I understand that you took a lot away from that meeting. What I understand the messaging is that they provide a lot of resources to our community in support of individuals facing homelessness. I really want to emphasize the messaging that the province does fund our shelter services and our housing support works, and we're very grateful for that, and we've seen some incredible success at bringing individuals into stability and housing. What we are bringing forward to you is a gap in the system that is not currently funded by the province, and it's the ability to go out to people where they are, in the woods, in the encampments, behind the commercial areas in our county where no one else is going. None of the doctors are out there looking to see if somebody needs to be treated. None of the social workers are putting on their boots and looking for people. This is a service that we have trained staff to provide, and we see the need because people are losing their lives or experiencing chronic homelessness because no one is reaching out to them. So I really implore you to consider our request for funding and to step into that role to support the most vulnerable citizens of your community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does any other member of the public like to address council?
Good evening, Mayor Corkum, council, and staff, and thank you for all that you do. My name is Una Proudfoot, and I live in Coldbrook. Here with a correction, a comment, and 2 questions. Regarding nominations committee and nomination committee minutes. So I have, understandably, a draft version in front of me. And there was a motion to approve minutes from a November 7th, 2024 meeting. I don't believe there was a meeting on November 7th. So that's the correction that I'm offering up. A comment will come further. So my question with the nomination committee meeting minutes was, it stated, following discussion, the nominating committee accepted all recommendations provided by staff leads on the committees, with the exception of the recommendation for the Planning Advisory Committee. As you know, Mayor Corkum, I reached out to you to seek clarification. I wasn't sure if I was seeking clarification on the minutes and the writing of the minutes or the process. So I reached out and asked for clarification as to whether or not that meant that the PAC appointee was not named that day or was the only one that was not a staff recommendation that day. Your response, and I do thank you for your time and response and realize that I'm fortunate to live in a municipality where a mayor answers a direct email, was, hi Una, sorry I just got your email, it went to my junk mail. The appointments were made on November 21st. At the nominating committee meeting of PAC, selected from the applicants that applied. Unfortunately, everyone cannot be picked, although we had, in this case, more than required of qualified applicants. I suggest you consider reapplying next year. Thank you for your interest in serving. Please note that at this point in time, I did not say that I had applied. I was simply seeking clarification. So I went back again and asked the second time for clarification, and the response back from the second email was, nominating committee picked from those that applied on that day. Staff had made recommendations for other committees. Nominating committee is not obligated to accept staff recommendations. However, I do not recall a staff recommendation for PAC, as again, we had more than needed apply that were qualified. End of story. My comment is simply that I think your response was perhaps a wee bit abrupt, and one of the reasons I'm here this evening. My questions are, when did the discussion, deliberation, and decision for the PAC appointee take place? Was it in fact during that meeting? The minutes do not reflect that. And my second question is there a process in place for applicants to know where or how they can prepare for further consideration, future consideration rather, in particular those who were staff recommended but not appointed, especially as you suggest that I consider reapplying next year? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Any other member of the public like to address council? Okay. All right. Can we get a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Peckford, second by Councillor Hiltz. All those in favor or against, please press your button. Motion carried. Thank you. If she's been snowing, have a safe drive home.